Hello, everybody, and welcome in to this edition of Card Central 365. Brenden Schaeffer, joined by Ethan Hannaford, as we break things down for the St. Louis Cardinals, going into a series finale on Sunday, where they will take on the San Francisco Giants once more and look to take the series with Sonny Gray on the bump. Thank you for joining this presentation, which is powered by Gray Bar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. And, of course, all content here on STL Sports Central is brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Ethan, what a way to wrap up the game on Saturday, as the Cardinals couldn't muster any offense until you get to the ninth inning, bases loaded, nobody out. Thomas DeJacy, and then Jordan Walker, of all people, coming through, snapping an 0 for 25 skid, having the ability to celebrate with his teammates. Man, that's got to fire you up. And I guess the question is, where does it take the Cardinals, and in particular Walker, from here? Is this something that these guys can use as a little bit of fuel to end the season on a positive note? I'm not saying make the playoffs, but have some pride in performance and find a way to, play loose, play fun, and rack up as many wins as they can. That was cool to see last night.
I think so, and I agree. And my thing is that when you look at the way that Ollie Marmol has had this team playing this year, I think the biggest word that we've heard Marmol try to go for and use is consistency, right? He wants this team to be consistent. Now, when you have a young group like he does, that's really hard to do. So it hasn't necessarily fired on all cylinders at all points, but what has been consistent and what he has taken great pride in, and I think that I can say that at least I do as well, is that the Cardinals' mode of preparation and the way in which they go about things has been very consistent, knowing that the results haven't always been there, but the way in which they go about it, their mindset has remained relatively consistent. That doesn't mean, though, that once you get to this point in September, you're in the final few months of the season, you're out of the playoff race, that it can't get to be a little bit of a drag, right? So I think that games like this, even when you look at the Cardinals not being in the mix for the playoffs, still do matter. It still matters to win these kinds of games. One, to teach you of the importance of winning in September, but also just to remind you that it's fun. It's good to be able to win like this, to get your home crowd riled up, to see Jordan Walker step up like he did. Boy, much needed. Probably one of the more much needed moments of 2025 when you look at everything that's happened for him this past week, from the comments from Brant Brown, which sound like they were deserved. That's not to say that Walker is innocent, right? But he has struggled all week, broken 0 for 25 with the walk-off hit last night. And so yes, good to see that. You hope that the Cardinals are able to build off of that a little bit, that coming into Sunday's contest, they have a little bit more pep in their step. There's a little bit more fire. And as a result, they're able to take the series. And then you see what happens the remainder of the year. But yes, these are the kinds of games, especially in my opinion, for a young team down the stretch. When you look at the way in which they did come back, they stayed at it. They stayed patient. They had ample opportunities last night with runners in scoring position where they just were not able to come through. That would have been a very frustrating loss last night if they would not have won. However, they stuck with it. They stayed patient. They did not allow for the frustration of not being able to come through in those moments in multiple situations. Some of them being a result of just bad baseball, overall bad baseball IQ. They did not let that frustration get to them. They stuck with it, and they ended up pulling off the win at the end. And I think that that's the sign of a mature team. Yeah, overall, good win last night. You hope the Cardinals are able to build off of it. It's the kind of win that you look at, that Ollie Marmol, I'm sure, is looking at and saying, yes, I would like them to be able to build some stepping stones from that win here to wrap up the season. Let's hope that they're able to do so.
Yeah, and I mean, right now, a game below 500, you win today, and certainly the pitching matchup favors the Cardinals in this one. Tang for the Giants has a 7 ERA going against Sonny Gray. We'll talk about our expectations for Gray, as he did struggle in his last outing. But the question of, can they carry some momentum from that Walker walk-off into today's game? I credit Ollie Marmol for at least keeping that in play, because Walker is back in the lineup today, according to what I am seeing from MLB.com's game day tab. That is good to see, because I know there's an outfield rotation, and it, hasn't always played every single day, but you got to get him right back in there after a finish like last night. Nathan Church will be in center field tonight for Victor Scott. Victor had a couple of moments in last night's game where you mentioned maybe some baseball fundamentals, throwing to the wrong base. The double steal was thrown out on that, which, try to be aggressive. That happens sometimes. But he is not in the lineup today. Fermin at third base will be batting ninth. Interesting, they've got Mason Wynn now in the cleanup spot for another day. Just,
I got nothing. I got nothing.
I get to ball skills. I mean, there's a case to be made. You got to go left, right, or you don't have to. But when you look at this lineup, it's really Nootbaar, Herrera, Gorman, and Wynn. Those are the guys that comprise the top four in the lineup today. Everybody else is kind of, replacement player in Fermin and Church. JC's, not hitting with a robust season. He's batting
How
fifth.
dare you disrespect Pedro Pajes and his red hot August bat like that?
Hey, Pajes is in there. He's batting sixth. And I tell you, I have been about as big of a Pajes fan as anybody this season. And I know there's a lot of folks who, find him to be an easy punching bag. I don't really get it, but I've lost the will to fight anymore with people about that, because I've said my piece and they've said theirs, and the chips will fall where they fall, but Pajes is in there as well. And I guess with the Mason Wynn thing, if you're going to bat a lefty leadoff, Wynn's either got to be fourth or second, and Herrera's been the more productive bat, so that's the more important spot in the lineup. And so that's where Herrera is, and that slides Mason to fourth. And it is a little bit of like a what's it going to harm at this point sort of vibe. So I don't know. It doesn't really bother me that much. It kind of is what it is. I'll take to a couple of the comments here. We'll continue to talk. I want to make sure we kind of double back too about Palante last night, because I felt like that was an important outing for him as well. Aaron saying hopefully they don't screw up the top 10 pick. There's not a lot that you can really say about that. The Cardinals won 83 games last year, and they did get picked in the lottery. So it's not, to lose more isn't a guarantee of, improving your pick standing. And I'd rather them win more, because I think that can build more of this current core, and the players that we're hoping could be part of the next core, to say, hey, we're learning how to win on the job, and there can be value of that. This also might be the last top 10 pick for a few years, and that's the hope, right? The hope is that you're able to kind of get back into playoff contention within 2026, or probably more like 2027. I think right now, Ethan, I'll ask you this, more big picture. 2026, we kind of we talk about it ad nauseum, because it's the next thing, and it's really compelling, because I think we're going to see a lot of changes compared to the roster that's out there right now. We think that. We don't know it for sure, which is kind of what makes it even more interesting to track and look forward to. If you had to pick today, we know very little about what next year's going to look like. Guess the record is my question for you today. Again, we're not going to pin you to it, because we think there's going to be a lot of changes. But the reason I ask, I kind of think it'll be rather similar to this year, maybe a little above 500, maybe a little bit below. If Chaim Bloom is really aggressive, I'll get more aggressive in my prediction by the time it rolls around. But like when people talk in those terms about what they expect for next year, we don't really talk a lot about like, what do we actually think? I think like 82 wins is about where, which again is probably not going to get people too excited. But if that happened, it would be like, okay, like they're continuing to, as they're overhauling everything underneath the hood of this vehicle, if you will, they're still kind of making strides toward staying competitive-ish. I'm curious what you expect for next year.
Well, I can tell you what, Aaron is an optimist, because he has them at 70 wins in 2026.
He loves it, man. He's fired up about him.
My concern is the starting pitching.
That
is the big concern. I think that the starting lineup, although it has been very inconsistent for a lot of 2025, I think individually you've seen several pieces build in the right direction to where you feel really confident about them going into 2026. I'm really excited about Mason Wynn. I know he's been cooling off the last, I don't know, several weeks. We know he's also been playing through injury. But the way that Ollie Marmol talks about Mason Wynn, it sounds like there's no one that gets him more excited than Mason Wynn, just for how well he's going about the process, but also how far away he is even now from his ceiling offensively. That's exciting. So I feel good about Mason Wynn. I feel good about Alec Burleson. How can you not after the 2025 that he's had? I feel good about Ivan Herrera. I feel even better now that he has been able to respond and find some of that power here in the
Yeah.
late run of the season because we saw it early, right? We saw it early. We saw him get banged up a couple of times. And then we kind of saw the power disappear. And you're kind of wondering, okay, the adjustments are being made. How will he respond? And he's responded, and the power has returned here in the last couple of weeks. And I think that that's encouraging. So I would put Ivan Herrera in there. As far as other guys that I like in the offense, oh geez, those are probably the main three. I mean, Brendan Donovan, yes. Will he be here next year? That's a question to be figured out. But Brendan Donovan's bat, I think he's solidified himself as one of
That's
the
this point here,
better bats.
by the way, is like the lineup right now is not what we're going to see next year.
No,
We got to
no.
understand this is a
What are
very
we seeing?
September
Three,
feel.
four guys right now that are in the lineup that we're
Yeah.
going to see.
Yeah.
Contreras is Contreras. He's going to be right around an 800 OPS. So I think there are some building blocks right now for what the Cardinals have, and I think they're going to hope to continue to find those and build those in some of these other guys. Victor Scott II, Jordan Walker. I think Nolan Gorman's made some great strides, even though he's been really quiet the last couple of weeks. So I think there still is some really encouraging signs for the offense. The starting pitching is what makes me nervous. We're looking at potentially right now from guys that have started a game before in the major leagues having three guys right now penciled in for 2026. I'm thinking we don't know what's going to happen with Andre Palante, the direction they think they're going to go with him. But right now, if there's no one else, then he's going to have to start. You got Matthew Liberatore and Michael McGreevy. We don't know if Sonny Gray is going to be on this team in 2026. And you got a lot of minor league pieces that maybe they take a chance at, but also feels like you might be rushing them at this point. Maybe it depends on the kind of spring that they have. So depends on how Chaim Bloom plays this trade market. Depends on what kind of flexibility he is given in the free agent market. But right now, the starting pitching really concerns me about this Cardinals team. So I would probably say, as of now, a little bit worse than this year. That doesn't mean that they would be taking a step backwards necessarily, because I think it is relatively realistic to see some of those starting pitching prospects by the end of next year. Quinn Matthews, it would surprise me if we didn't see him in 2026. I just don't think that he'll be an impact piece in the first half of the season. You'd have to kind of go through and see which ones will be healthy at that point, but he's kind of the main one that comes to mind. I would probably say, what are they on pace for now? 80 wins?
Yeah, 81.
I would probably say 78 to 80 is
Okay.
what my window would be.
And like when I ask that and say 82, I'm giving credit to Chaim Bloom, and we'll see if it's earned, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt ahead of time to say, surely he's not going to go into the season with a rotation of Gray, McGreevy, Palante, Liberatore, and just not go out and get somebody, right? I'm not saying that he's going to have the ability through ownership to say we can sign another Sonny Gray contract. I don't think that's coming
right now.
Like, I just don't think that's happening, but I do think you have to sign probably two guys to like, again, I continue to harken back to Jose Quintana, who signed for like $5 million with the Brewers. Give me two of those to come in, and then you got six before having to dip into a Quinn Matthews tier when you get to spring training, because one of them will get hurt. I know I said that all last February and March, and it didn't happen, but that's the first year in 10 years.
That was such
that's the first time.
Yeah,
that's the first time since I started covering the Cardinals in 2016 that's been the case.
You say the same thing next year, and it will be correct.
Exactly right. That is at least my approach. This is off topic, but when I think about for fantasy football last year, all the running backs stayed healthy, and I'm normally like, oh, the running backs will get hurt. Pick up their backups. This year, guess what? I'm going, the running backs are going to get hurt. It's the same thing. You have to know that when something is true 9 years out of 10, the 11th year, it's probably going to revert back to what you know to be true. And so you have to plan a little bit around that in terms of the pitching. And I'll give credit before it's really earned because we just don't have any idea. I'm giving credit to Heim and then also to ownership to understand that you have to like put your best foot forward, even if that's like a cheaping out version of that. You still have to do something, and so I'm anticipating that when I say the 82. But you're right, that's the starting pitching is exactly what it is. Before we get into more about the starting pitching, and I'll continue to find the new 10 comments that have posted, but I wanted to ask you this one as we're kind of looking at 2026. Where are you on Victor Scott? Because his defense is as good as it gets. And that to me is kind of like the Mason Wynn theory of you build upon that, because I don't think Victor Scott is yet offensively what he's going to be. I don't think the ceiling for Vic is quite as high as Mason Wynn, but I feel like we're about at the floor with Victor Scott. Low 600s when it comes to the OPS. The guy has 31 stolen bases and he's been batting at the bottom of the order most of the time. So not always having the table setting opportunities that you'd have if you were, batting at the top, which he just doesn't really have the highest on base to be able to justify that. But I'm just kind of curious, where are you? Are you still just penciling him in, or do you consider that role to at least be up for conversation? Maybe it's as simple as, hey, a right-handed platoon option that's legitimate, not like Garrett Hampson style, but like they go out and get somebody that is capable as a righty to where Victor maybe doesn't have to play against lefties. Or is his defense good enough that you say, man, batting ninth, there are things about this roster you have to fix, but that's really not a focal point. How do you come down on that conversation with Vic?
When you look at the ability and the potential of Victor Scott, and when you match that with what 2026 is likely going to be, in my opinion, there's no reason that Victor Scott should not be playing almost every day as your starting center fielder. I mean, if the Cardinals were going into 2026 and it was very realistic that it was, okay, this team is going for it, then that's a different conversation. To be giving a guy a season of, okay, like you have opportunity to continue to work on the craft to figure it out. We know the defensive ability. We know the speed. We know that when he gets on base, it's basically an extra base hit. I mean, at this point, we know that. The thing with Victor Scott, right, as you mentioned, is that the bat has not been very consistent. When it comes to Victor Scott, he's my starting center fielder for a good chunk of 2026. And part of that is also because of the way in which, I know I harped on this a little bit with the way he spoke about Mason Wynn. He speaks very highly of Victor Scott too, as well. Ollie Marmol. And I trust what the manager is putting out there because, they have shown their honesty when they aren't happy with the way in which something's going on as well. So that's why I'm willing to trust and not just think that Marmol is just, blindly backing his guys. He's been open and honest about what he wants to see guys improve upon. And we've seen this ourselves. The notebook that Victor Scott carries around with just the minute details about every single thing that he observes and things he wants to improve on and work on in his process, his daily way in which he goes about things. He's going about things the right way. I discard 2024, practically all of it, in the way in which he was thrown up. Not ready at the beginning of the year for the majors. Finally was able to get it going to AAA. Played here for a few weeks at the end of the year. Looked good. But, I mean, this was basically his rookie year, if we're being honest. So 2026, I look at as much more of an evaluation year in the same way in which I think a lot of fans looked at that for guys like Nolan Gorman, like, I don't know, who else would you throw in that? Maybe Jordan Walker, but he's going to get another year of that, I guess. I think I put him more in that category. But, man, there's just too much potential when you look at a guy that could easily be a 9 or even a 1 guy. If you can get that approach to improve, then, man, he feels like the perfect guy in that spot. So I feel like it would be silly to not give him ample opportunity, knowing what the expectation will be for your 2026 team. I'd rather them spend more money on the starting pitching market than go in and get a platoon guy to play center field with them.
That's interesting. And I think like the platoon guy could come for $3 million, but at the same point, maybe there's only $5 million to spend. Like it could be that way, in which case I would firmly agree with you. I just play Victor Scott because I think we haven't seen his best yet at the plate. Arguably, we haven't seen his best in the field either in terms of like the fundamentals. That throw to third base last night, that's something that comes with time, and he's not going to make that play in 2026, 2027, 2028. Like, I believe he's going to continue to refine because of what you said about the detail-oriented nature of his prep and the way that he cares and the way that he works. I don't believe that that's going to be the type of it's a mental mistake. It's a fundamental mistake, but it's, to me, not the kind of thing that I think Victor Scott is never going to dial in. I don't believe that. I think he's going to continue to improve in the field because his instincts and his athleticism are unbelievable. They're off the charts. He's going to continue to refine those things. At the plate, I think he's at his floor right now, and he's still going to steal 40 bases potentially. I mean, that's what you get. So I agree with you. You could go the platoon route, but that also serves to hold him back. I would not be looking at my number 9 hitter and going, oh, he's just not doing enough. When, frankly, number 8, 7, 6, 5, look elsewhere and say that's where really, if we're going to try to make some upgrades, it has to come, because this guy batting 9th is going to be a Gold Glove winner someday, and he's also going to turn into a league average bat. I think that just means 700 OPS. Right now he's at 625. If you give me league average offense with that defense, I would more than live with that. I would put that guy in my outfield for a decade. So we'll see with Victor Scott. You guys have been putting in a lot of comments. We're gonna touch on Gorman. We're gonna touch on the Contreras question, a little more on Palante and stuff like that. But I want to get to this first because we do have to talk about one of our presenting sponsors here with DraftKings. As if you're in Missouri, it's time to get ready. The wait is almost over. DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app, is coming soon to the Show Me State. And even though it's not available yet, you can sign up today. New Missouri customers can get $300 in bonus bets when we launch on December 1st. Download now and place a $5 bet when we go live. And DraftKings Sportsbook brings you everything you need to elevate your game day, including live in-game betting, lightning-fast payouts, and endless ways to get in on the action, all right from your phone. And when DraftKings officially goes live in Missouri, you'll be betting with the Sportsbook app, trusted by millions, safe, secure, and has fast money withdrawals. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code STL Sports to grab $300 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet when we go live December 1st. That's code STL Sports in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER, 21 plus. Physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Excludes customers who redeem pre-launch sign-up offer. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. Lots of great questions here in the chat that I want to try to get to because there's some higher arching topics in September. And look, we've got today's game. Sonny Gray on the bump. He gave up a touchdown last time against the Athletics. Hopefully not the case today. I do think the Cardinals will win today, but it's one of those things where I understand why people are a little bit more interested in talking about what may be to come down the road. And this, to me, is going to be one of the most compelling off seasons to be doing shows like this, because it feels like almost every day we'll have a new angle on, they're going to sign that guy. Is this trade coming to fruition? Those sorts of things. And it seems like Cardinals fans are already sort of in this mode. This from Sound of Silence. Do you think Gorman will be moved over the winter, or does he return? I think he has the potential to get it figured out and could be a huge threat. The raw power is as strong as anybody in the organization, Ethan, but the consistency, and then I think the positional aspect of this as well. He's come around defensively at third base, had that spell where the throwing was just not consistent, but that's not really a long-term problem for him. His arm is actually his strength as a defender. Offensively, if he's like a hit or miss 730 OPS guy, but he hits 25 to 30 bombs as an everyday third baseman, that's one of those where you go, all right, that can sit as my number 6 or number 7 batter, but he can't be my 4th best batter because my offense isn't enough. That's where I am on Gorman. Like, I think we know what he is. We don't have to sit here and go, what is Nolan Gorman anymore? He's showing you. I think this year is a great example of it. If he plays 600 plate appearances, he's going to hit 20 to 25 to 30 home runs. The OPS is going to be bogged down by the number of strikeouts and the spells where he is inconsistent. But he's going to be like an above league average player. You got to know that you've got 5 or 6 guys that are going to be more threatening than him in the lineup to really feel like he fits in as a top 10 lineup in this league. Does that make sense? And that's what makes him difficult as a decision on trade him or keep him.
So I think in the way in which you go about Nolan Gorman. So here's my thought. Here's my thought on the Cardinals infield because there's log jams everywhere on this freaking roster.
Yeah.
And in a realistic world, I think that you're probably going to have to trade two infielders, and one of them could be Nolan Arenado. I think that's the one they'll try to get out of there first.
Right.
See if they can clear that contract. But if you
And let's say
don't,
they
then you're
can't. Let's just leave that alone and say he's not on the team next year. Because frankly, I
okay.
don't think he makes
Okay.
sense on the team. But for this hypothetical, I'm like that part has to be a given because, like you
Okay.
said, you still have another logjam after that. So
Yeah.
what would you?
All right. So
Where do you go next?
Let's say Arenado's gone. Third base is open.
Yeah,
That would hypothetically be Brendan Donovan's, but we know that the Cardinals have this prospect. I guess he's been pretty good. His name's JJ Weatherholt. He's gonna be
heard of
ready to
him.
go
Yeah,
come 2026. He's gonna be ready to go. Would not surprise me if he is in the starting lineup come opening day, or playing very early in the 2026 season.
yeah.
Um, there's just, if that's the case, there's not room for all of those guys. There's just not. So it makes me think that either Nolan Gorman or Brendan Donovan could be getting traded this offseason. I mean, this is totally, just hypothetical, my own personal opinion. When you look at A plus B and kind of having to add up to C, unless someone's going to be a bench bat in which they, don't want to give at bats to, or if they're doing this same kind of, all right, well, we're gonna have to just try to find a way to get them all at bats. Man, I hope they don't do that again next year, because that was really frustrating, both for I think fans, but also for us talking about it, right? Because you want guys to get opportunity, and there just wasn't enough. And I don't want that to be the case with JJ Weatherholt, Nolan Gorman after he'd made great strides this year, et cetera, et cetera. I think you're going to have to trade either Nolan Gorman or Brendan Donovan. And I think who you trade tells you where the Cardinals feel about where they are. I think that we can all agree that Brendan Donovan would get you more. Would it hurt you in the now? Yes. But also, if the Cardinals were to trade him away, is that them saying, yeah, maybe this is a little bit farther away than fans think? Brendan Donovan is 28. He is entering what, year 2 of arbitration, I believe. Is that right, Brendan? Yes, year 2.
Donnie will be year 2, and then
Yes.
so 2 more years
So,
of
but
eligibility before
but
he's a
this
free agent.
but a lot of people would argue that this is the time to extend him if you're going to extend him. If he were to get traded, it would not surprise me if he's extended immediately. Um,
Yeah.
so I think a lot of how the Cardinals go about that middle infield spot will be dependent on how close they feel they are, and also how the market is playing out to be. We know that the starting pitching is not it's not looking great going into 2026. That makes me wonder if they might try to throw in a bigger chip in order to get something better back, knowing that
Yep.
2026 they're not going to probably be world beaters. 2027, who knows if we'll even have baseball, So I mean, it's not crazy to say we're looking at 2028 as that turning point where the Cardinals are really looking to be contenders. Now, that's also without knowing what 2027 will hold. But if that's the case, that's a ways to go. So I really like the adjustments that Nolan Gorman has made in the last 3 months. I know that the last couple of weeks have been much more silent, but when you look at guys that had the most room to grow going into this season, I think it was probably Walker and Gorman. And based off of Gorman's treacherous 2024, there were not a lot of people that had hope in him. For him to be able to make the level of adjustments that he did this offseason and even during the season to get to where he's even here now, and we're saying, yeah, Nolan Gorman can be a 25-30 home run guy and have a 730 OPS. The Cardinals don't have that power potential anywhere else in this lineup, too. And I think that's something you have to consider as well. Could they find it on the market? Maybe, but that's going to cost you money. Brendan Donovan's not going to be able to provide that. Yes, you get the strikeouts with it as well, but part of me looks at, man, okay, he's shown you the ability to do it for a stretch of 2 to 3 months in recent. I think that because there's no power anywhere else in the lineup and no one that's even close within the organization to providing it. I wonder if they try to take a little bit of a further gamble on Nolan Gorman and say, let's roll with him and let's give him let's actually give him that full 600 plate appearances this year, and he can be our pop. He can be our 4 or 5. Because honestly, if he's in the lineup come next year, it wouldn't surprise me if he is. If it's Gorman, Herrera, and Contreras in some sort of order as the 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's realistic. And, we'll see. Aaron does mention there are interesting aspects to all this. Herrera has no position, which is true. So if he's going to become an outfielder, is Nootbaar somebody that's on the block? What ends up
Right.
happening there? Steve thinks we'll trade Contreras, because you can get something for him. He's productive. Whether he's a catcher or not, he's got a good bat. And Mason Windu saying if Contreras will agree to a trade, they would move him. 100% agreed. I don't think he wants to leave. I don't think they're going to trade him. I don't think Contreras is in play for that reason, because I just don't believe that he's going to want to go. So he's got to be a staple in there as well. They could trade for a pitcher, too many left-handed hitters. So that's why I view like either Gorman or Donovan, Nootbaar. I'm not saying that it would happen in the same trade, but like I feel like an anchor of a trade is one of those left-handed bats plus a pitching prospect or two to get a pitcher that's controllable could be something that makes sense for the Cardinals. You
Throw
get
in
a
a catching,
better.
throw in a catching prospect too.
Why not? Just not Rainiel Rodriguez. That's the one I
Please
would
no.
not trade.
Please not him.
I'm not moving him. That's another cold dead hands one in my opinion. But
Mhm.
because the upside is just too tremendous, you gotta see some of that play out. But when it comes to which one, it's like, well, yeah, sure. If it's Donovan plus a pitching prospect, you can get probably a better return.
Right.
Nootbaar, I think you could is probably a better return than Gorman at this point, even though he's not had as consistent of a season, can't stay healthy. I still think Nootbaar's name carries a little bit more, and the people will fall in love with the StatCast numbers as well. And so I think he might have the next most value. Gorman, I still am not convinced. I think, again, like I said, I think everybody kind of knows what he is. There's some value to what he is, but I don't know that, people are going to be beating down the door to trade for him. That being
Yeah.
said, even if I acknowledge that of the three, he's got the lowest value, he's still the one I would trade because I'm going to be very stubborn about Brendan Donovan. The trick of that is that I don't know defensively if the Cardinals think or want Donovan to play third, and I don't know if they want Weatherholt to play third either. I think those are both guys they view long-term as second basemen, which makes that conversation, and you had that comment up there that was good. You can put that back up there, that Donovan's the obvious trade choice. We may not like it, but if we look at it objectively, he's the one. That might be right. The one thing that I'm concerned about is I do think the Cardinals will be better sooner than a lot of fans think they will be. And when that happens, I want Brendan Donovan on that team. I really do. And I could end up, a couple years down the road, maybe Donnie can't stay healthy, right? Like he's had some injuries. Maybe for him, it's just he's kind of going to be what he is, and we don't ever see that next gear consistently enough. He's an all-star this year. But there's a realm in which that happens. And we look back on Donovan's career and we go, yeah, good player, but was never great for a sustained period of time. I just believe in Donovan more, I think, than which Mason Windu seems to believe in him too. It's to say we may not like it, but objectively, if the Cardinals aren't in a contending window during the next 2 years where they're like ready to go for broke on a World Series bid, then Donnie's gone after that. And we can also kind of use what we know to be true about this front office and really more like ownership, that they're probably not signing big time contracts right now, even if we want them to. And so, is this going to be the offseason where they would sign a Brendan Donovan? We think it has to be, or you probably trade. So I agree with all of what's being said there. I just don't, I don't like it. And I don't want to see it happen, but it could. It really could happen. I would still extend Brendan Donovan. I would come together with his agent and say, new front office, sorry about the whole arbitration thing. We want you to be a part of our core. And I think that would send the right message to Cardinals fans about the direction that they're heading. But, time will tell. Time will tell. And I know folks want us to explore the Contreras thing. I just don't think it would happen. But if it did, Burleson plays. But real quick, if it did, Burleson plays first base. You maybe don't have to trade another outfielder to be able to fit Herrera. You'd still have Nootbaar, Herrera, and potentially Jordan Walker for corners. But Burleson moving to first base would definitely help alleviate a little bit of that strain in the outfield. I don't think it makes you better quicker because I think Contreras is still going to be productive next year.
Yeah,
but that's kind of the thought on that. Ethan, we're about to wrap things up here. A lot of good stuff that we've been able to dive into today. I think there's a lot more of these exact comments that are, going to be topics of conversation throughout the offseason as we decide, which of these guys need to be moved and which the Cardinals need to build around. Is there anything as a parting thought with this conversation that you want to get out here today before we wrap things up and look forward to this afternoon's game?
I think the biggest thing is to remember that, this could go, so many different directions. There are so many ways in which they could navigate this. The scary part, though, and I think it's easy, at least it has been easy in my mind, to have the mindset of, well, like, once they trade Arenado, assuming that they will be able to, if they're not able to trade Nolan Arenado, then boy, this gets even more interesting, and not in a good way necessarily. So hopefully, and that's no disrespect to Nolan Arenado. The two parties are just heading in different directions, and it's time to
Yep.
move on. It's time to move on. Opportunity has to be provided somewhere else, especially with a um, a infielder, an infielder with the pedigree and the excitement that JJ Weatherholt is bringing around baseball. There's just not room for Nolan Arenado anymore on this team. And but the problem is the no trade clause. So are they going to be able to trade him? Would they go as far as how far are they willing to go to not have Nolan Arenado in this lineup? It would be very opposite of the Cardinals from a historic standpoint to pay him to not play for them. There's been multiple times in recent history where fans are just begging for buyouts or releases, and it just has not happened. So, how far are they willing to go with Nolan Arenado is going to be, I think, the question that needs to get answered before you can figure out pretty much any of this other stuff.
Yep. It
Start
was
with
the
that,
topic of
go from there.
it was the entire offseason last year and it didn't happen. And so that
Yep,
really did put a crimp into the plans. And, here we are a year later. And I think the same conversation with less flexibility because
yep.
Arenado's had another down season offensively. So how many teams are going to be clamoring to trade for him or his money? Probably not many. So that's going to be a big topic. But again, Arenado's back next week, potentially after a rehab stint in Springfield. And so if there's a revival to his bat, there could be, a window of opportunity to maybe say, hey, there's a team that will take on some of the money, maybe give you a prospect for him. We're on the same page. It's not anti-Arenado. If he hadn't been hurt, I think he would have won the Gold Glove this year at
Yeah,
third
me too.
base. I think he's still playing at that level defensively. The offensive numbers are what they are, and I don't know if they're ever going to be revived. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll see. I can't wait for the offseason shows because it'll be a lot of this where we're able to dive into the big picture stuff. And we may not always agree. We may not always agree with what the team does, but I think it's going to be fun to be able to dive into a lot of this when there aren't games daily to also be kind of taking a look at. Sonny Gray taking the mound today for the Cardinals, 12-8 with a 4.43 ERA. We'll see if the
Hey, we got good
ostensible
weather.
ace of the Cardinals.
Good weather.
Yeah, we
Good
got
weather
good weather.
today.
Good weather.
Good weather.
Sonny's got a 4.43 ERA. That's better than McGreevy at 4.6, better than Palante at 5.2, better than Michaelis at 4.9. So, it kind of is what it is right now. We'll see what ends up happening. And Mason Windu looking forward to that Chaim Bloom first opening press conference. I am as well. That's going to do it, though, for this edition of Card Central 365, powered by Gray Bar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. Of course, all the content here on STL Sports Central is powered by DraftKings. The crown is yours. For Ethan, I'm Brenden. Check out the game today and stay tuned to STL Sports Central for the postgame. We'll see you.